In this demonstration I'll be using Delcam Crispin Shoemaker Pro 2012 R2 to create a sports shoe design similar to the one you can see in the image on the screen there. So the demonstration starts with the importing of some digitized data, which is the last. So I'm going to import this STL file, and we're automatically entered into the last identification wizard, where the first thing I have to do is to enter 4 points. So the heel top and heel bottom point, point at the toe, and a cone point. Those points are used to identify the top curve and the feather edge curve, which you can see there. Those look fine, so I'm going to move on to the next stage, where Shoemaker splits the digitized data into 3 segments: upper, bottom and top, and it fits surfaces to the different segments of the last, like so. So at this stage we can adjust the heel height and the toe spring, and also the swivel of the last, and then enter some information about the last. So this is a right foot European men's, size 42. I can give this last a name, and I can also give it a description if I wish, which is stored with the last. Finally, hit the finish button and the surfaces are created. Now Shoemaker stores the last flattening with the last itself. So we're automatically launched into the flattening wizard, where I can enter fields and parameters which affect the way the flattening occurs, and also affect the way the flattening is displayed on the screen. So that's the default flattening, and we have 2 windows: the upper flattening window and the last bottom flattening window, and of course the last itself. So if I come to the last tab, we have a few operations that we can perform on lasts. First of all, we can do some meaning of the flattening. So come back to the 2D window, and I'll say we want to average the center line, top curve and the back curve of the last, and we can optionally average some of the feather edge as well if we wish. So let's adjust these 2 points and accept that, like so. So that's the default flattening. Now a lot of companies have lasts that they've used for a long time, and they have flattenings for those lasts that they've also used for a long time, and they may wish to maintain the use of that of their user-defined flattening in Shoemaker Pro. Now this can be done as long as you can capture the 2D flattening profile that you wish to have in a digital format. And what we then do is we import that 2D last flattening format. So here I have a DGK file which represents the flattening that we wish to use. So the green imported curves are the flattening that we will teach Shoemaker that we wish to use. So back on the last tab, and if we go for the user-defined flattening, we'll do the inner first. So literally select the imported curve and say OK, and repeat that process, but this time selecting the outer curve and OK. So now Shoemaker will use the imported flattening curves for flattening that last, and it will no longer use its default flattening. Okay, so the last is created and the flattening is good, and it's stored with the last. So next thing we'll do is come into style line creation, where I can say I want to create curves, and I can start to sketch my design, touching on the center line, and using the left mouse button I can start to enter points which represent the outline of the shape that I'm trying to create. I can hold down the shift button to make the final point of a curve perpendicular to the center line, and again hold down the shift button to see the little right angle appear, which means that we're perpendicular to the center line. Okay, so I've now got 3 curves sketched on one side of the last. I could sketch on the other side, but what I'll do here is make a mirror of the curves that I've already sketched, like so. Now by default I've just created a linked mirror, which means if I edit the curves on one side, the curves on the other side will automatically update. Okay. Now I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to actually select those curves and delete them, and I'm going to change the view to look from this side. Something which is very common is the need to import a designer sketch or a photograph of an existing shoe and use that as a stencil for the sketching of the style line curves. So I'm going to open the stencil toolbar, and I'm going to say we're going to import a picture. So in this case it's a JPEG image of the design that we wish to create. So we now have the image and we have the last, so I can use the normal view control tools to change the size of the last, and I also have controls which let me change the size and position of the image. So I'm going to move this around and adjust its orientation and position to try and get it as good match between the last surface and the image as I possibly can. When I'm happy with the orientation, I can exit the stencil toolbar, and now you can see as we move the view dynamically, both last and image move together. And now that stencil is in place, again we can start to sketch style line curves straight through the image onto the last, like so. Undraw the stencil, and there we can see the curves that we've sketched, and we can return to that stencil view at any time by using the flyout that's been added to the toolbar. So at the start of stage 2 of this demonstration, we've changed the part, so I now have the stage 2 part in here with this last, and if I open up the stencils toolbar on the right hand side, we can reveal a wrapped stencil image. Okay, so if I rotate the last around, you can see that when we wrap the stencil image onto the last, we're no longer working in 2D, we're actually working in 3D. Now if I open up the stencil toolbar, you can see that I can adjust the transparency of the image like so, to increase or decrease the transparency to make it easier or to see the image. Now what we're going to do now is drop into curve creation, and I'm going to sketch a curve which is around the edges of this white dotty piece on the shoe. So I'm entering quite a few points to make sure I hold the shape reasonably well, and click on the first point again to close that curve, and we can of course drop in to edit mode and just adjust the location of these points if we needed to. I'm then going to sketch a second curve. So this second curve is going to start on the feather edge, and you'll notice the tip of the sketching pointer turns to a light blue colour, which indicates that we're snapped onto an existing curve. And then I'll just follow this blue edge up, double click to finish twice to create the second curve there. Now I'm now going to turn on level 6, and that will reveal all of the other style lines that I have already created. And then let me just zoom in, pick this style line that we've just sketched, and I'm going to adjust that, pull it back so that everything is nicely trimmed back like so. Okay, so next thing we'll do is move on to piece creation, and I've got to create a few pieces here. So I'll start with the curve that we've just sketched, then come down here onto the feather edge, and as soon as Shoemaker gets the close region, the shoe piece is created. Now in this case here, I actually want to remove this area in the center, so I'm going to identify that curve that we sketched there, and then a right mouse click removes that from that piece. Create another new piece, so again select the curve that we sketched, because that's going to be a different material. And then I also need a third piece which is in this region here. Now instead of chaining together all the curves for this piece, I'm going to give a single left mouse button click in the center of that piece. That allows Shoemaker to search left and right until it finds a closed area for itself, and that then creates the shoe piece like so. Okay, so those 3 shoe pieces that we've created have all got to have colours applied to them. So I can now use the drag and drop facility. So I can drag and drop any materials from the library, and that will update the shading colour of the pieces that we have created. Okay, now I'm now going to turn on level 7, which will reveal all of the other shoe pieces that we have already created, and I'll just turn off the stencil image, and you can see all of the detail and the pieces that we have created on this shoot so far. There's one additional piece that we have to create, which is at the back. Now again, I can do this with a single mouse button click in the center of that piece, and that will create that piece for us like so. And again, I'll adjust the material used for that to the spotty material like so. Now you can see at the moment that piece is fairly flat, and I want that to be a padded piece. So I'm going to open up the piece creation flyout, and I'm going to select the create padding option. That draws the selected piece on its own. I now choose the side where I want the padding to be applied. So if I give a left mouse button click on the outside shape of that piece, you can see now that we have this rather nice padding effect applied to that region of the model. Okay, so the next thing we'll do is to create some stitch curves. And to create a stitch curve, I'm first of all just going to drop back into curve sketching, but instead of sketching a curve, I'm going to select the curve that we've sketched first of all, and I'm going to do a mirror operation. So it could be linked or unlinked. In this case, I'll just do an unlinked mirror operation, and I'm going to make an offset of 1mm out from the shape of the existing curve. Okay, so that's going to be the center line for our stitching operation. So come back to stitching, open up the flyout where I have a selection of different stitch creation methods. The first one I'll use is create stitches by using existing style lines. Okay, so I can pick on the existing curve and the stitch is created like so. If I wish to edit the stitch, I can select the stitch that we've just created. I can open up the stitch toolbar, and again I could drag and drop a stitch pattern from the library. I can increase or decrease the separation and the size like so, and we could also drag and drop a material colour onto that if we wish to as well. Okay, so that's the first stitch creation method, which is using existing curves. The second stitch creation method is edge stitching. So we select edge stitching, we then select the piece that we wish the edge stitching to be applied to, and we then interactively choose the edges where we want the stitching to be applied, and we then say finish, where we get a preview, right mouse click, accepts the preview, and those stitches are created like so. Okay, so now if I turn on level 9, I've got all of the other stitching created for this design. I'm just going to pick this stitch pattern at the back and say copy properties, and then I'll paste the properties onto the other stitches that we've just created to make sure that everything is color coded correctly. Okay, so moving on to the next creation entity, which is pipes. Now again, we have a library of two-dimensional pipe cross sections that we could apply. I'll choose a round cross section, and again we have a couple of different methods of creating pipes, either by sketching or by using existing curves. So in this case I'm going to use an existing curve, and I'm going to pick on these two curves which are around the tongue region like so. That creates those pipes for me, and if I wanted to I could make those bigger or smaller. We can use the offset to make them smaller in this case, and then again come to the materials library, and I could drag and drop material from the library onto those pipes as well to give them a colour which coordinates them with the design. So we're now in stage 3 of the demonstration, and we're going to continue adding detail to the design, and the next detail we'll add is punches. So again I can open up the punch library where we have different tabs containing two-dimensional punch shapes that we can apply to the design. Two methods of creating punches, either using an existing curve or by sketching. So in this case we'll do some sketching. So I'm going to zoom in on this small region of the model here, double click to finish, sketch one line of punches, and again sketch a second line which comes down the design like so. I can select the punches and we can change the separation, repeat pattern, size of the punches, etc. until we get the punches looking exactly as we want them. and then I'll select both sets of punches together, and we can choose whether we're punching all the way through to the last or whether we're just punching through the first layer of material. So in this case here, I'll say we just punch these straight through to the first layer of material, and I'm going to put the punches onto another level, and if I zoom in you can see there that we've got our holes punched through the design. Just to highlight that a bit more, I'll just zoom in and drag and drop a different colour so the holes highlight much better. Okay, so those are punched holes. So the next creation activity is accessories, and again we have a library of accessories that we can choose from, different eyelets, buckles, in this case lugs. So I'm going to sketch a line of accessories, and I'm going to choose this first lug, and I'm going to sketch my line of accessories straight down the edge of where the laces are going to go. Okay, so there's the default accessories. Now again we can change the separation, so I'm going to have 5 of those lugs, and also I'm going to increase the size of them like so, and also I'm going to hover my cursor over the rotation and scroll the middle mouse button to change the direction of those accessories, and then I could mirror those, but I'm going to sketch a second line over this side like so, exactly the same way as the first, and then we'll use the copy properties to paste from one side to the other. And the final thing I have to do is just to adjust the orientation. So again, middle mouse key, scrolling around to get the second set of lugs in the correct orientation. Back to the materials tab, I'm going to select the metals tab, and then I can drag and drop a different colour onto those both sets of lugs to change the material type. Okay, so moving on, the next thing we'll create is laces. I can open up the laces flyout where there are 6 different lace styles to choose from. So I'm going to choose this over under, hold down the shift key to select both sets of lugs, and the laces will automatically be created passing through the lace lugs like so. So with those still selected, again, and my materials tab open, I'm going to select the laces tab where I can drag and drop different materials from the library to get the laces looking exactly as I want them, like so. In the fourth and final stage of this demonstration, we're going to concentrate on the sole. So if I click the sole activity button, we get all of the different creation methods for soles, so formal soles, ladies soles, and I'll start here by doing a simple sports sole. So when we click this option, Shoemaker automatically creates a top profile and a bottom profile, which are both used for creating the default shape. So these represent the bite line, the bite lines, and the horizon line of the curve to be created, of the sole to be created. Now these curves, you can edit them, so you can grab the points and pull them around. I'm going to take everything as default and just create a very basic simple sole, which is really just for visualization purposes. Okay, so in this case we've got this simple sole here. Now I could pick the sole if I wish to and go into edit mode, where we're presented with 2 different views, a plan view and a wireframe view. Now the wireframe view, we can either work on the bottom or we could work on the side profiles, and I can link the 2 side profiles together, and we could, if we wanted to, zoom in and just start to pull these points around to affect the shape of the bottom. Okay, so I'll do that and accept that change just to give that rear portion of the basic sports sole a little bit more curvature. And then also what I'll do is just look straight at the bottom of the sole, and I'll come onto the image wrap button, where we can import an image of a tread pattern. So in this case I've got a PNG file of a tread pattern, and we have the standard stencil controls where I can start to drag the image around. We can rotate it, change the aspect ratio if we wish to, move the image to get it located as we wish. When we're happy with the location of the image, we can wrap that onto the bottom of the sole like so, to give the appearance of some tread. And of course we can change the material type of the sole itself. So there, if I drag and drop a black colour, we've got just a very basic representation of a sole added onto our design. Okay, so that's how we can use the simple sole creation. So let me just undo that, get back to the point where we don't have the sole, like so, because what we're actually going to do here is drop into advanced mode. So making sure that we're still in sole mode, I can come to the bottom toolbar and we can launch into advanced mode. Okay, like so. Now if I turn on the yellow sole button, and what we'll see is a complex sports sole appear that's stored in the part itself. Okay, so there you can see we've got a fairly complex sports sole, but we wish to make some changes to this sole. So I'm going to remove the existing tread by turning off level 14, and we're going to wrap some new tread onto this region of the model. So I can come into my tread or triangle wrapping mode, where we go through the wizard. I'm going to identify a DMT file, which is going to be the texture wrap onto the sole, and I'm going to start with this wavy pattern, like so. So we get a preview of the pattern in the image window. We'll do caudal wrapping. I can ask for a preview of the wrap, which shows us the wrap map where we can manage any distortions that have occurred. And then we can start to adjust the size, shape and orientation of the triangle tread pattern that we're going to wrap onto this area. I don't need to trim this area because this set of triangles is going to completely replace the surface that we're wrapping the triangles onto. And I can hit the delete button to straight away take away the underlying surface, and then we'll colour these orange. So I'm going to select the Delcam logo in the center and just map that colour onto the triangle tread pattern that we've just wrapped. Let's repeat that operation on this side, but this time we'll use a different texture. So this time we'll use the angled tread file that we have again stored in the demo data folder. Caudal wrapping, I can ask for a preview. We can, if we want, adjust the size of the tread pattern again, make that slightly bigger. No trimming required again, because again these triangles will completely replace the underlying surface that we're wrapping these triangles onto. And again, with the surface still selected at the end of the process, hit the delete button and then color code them with the same orange color. And there you can see we've got our triangle tread pattern texture applied to the design. So the final thing we're going to do is to adjust this surface at the back of the design. So at the moment this is fairly regular ruled shape. I'm going to change that so it's got some ripples in it, some detail. Okay, so I'm going to start by opening the select pattern of points, and I'm going to enter the pattern that we wish to select, which is every point from number 2 to 22 on every second curve from 2 to 9. So we leave the edges untouched. Say OK. So that selects the pattern of points that we're going to, in this case, offset. So again, I'm going to say we have an edit operation. Just the points that we have selected, and the operation we'll perform is an offset. I'm going to offset the selected points by -1 to create this kind of ripple effect, like so. Okay, those are all the changes we'll make to the sole, so I'm going to accept that, which passes those changes back into Shoemaker, like so. Turn off the last and the curves. And the final bit of detail we'll add is to add a logo to this tongue region. So select the piece and say we're going to wrap onto there where we've got a Delcam logo, and again we can use the same controls. I can zoom the 3D view, or I can use the image controls to change the size, position and orientation of the image. When we're happy with the location, I can wrap that on, and if I wish I could also make the background, in this case the white, transparent to remove it. Undraw the last, and there is our finished sports shoe design. From here we could go into rapid prototyping We can take all of the flattened curves out to engineer, or we could use this model for creating high quality photorealistic rendered images.